see some familiar faces. And so, just good morning, good morning. Oh, I see another body pillow with Sebastian on it. Don't blink. That will be remembered, by the way, for the rest of my days. Seriously, for those of you that, well, you couldn't see my vantage point in the Q&A yesterday, but there were about 5 or 6 Sebastian body pillows. You had one, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And then when they said the don't blink thing, every time I did blink, I'd turn away from this one and there'd be one here. Like, oh God, and then there'd be one here. Oh God, it's real. And I woke up with all these marks on me. Where are these from? That was Grell's work. So this is, I'm trying to turn my phone off, and my phone is a pain, because it's a smartphone. I don't think it's very smart. It's not, it's attitude though. It's a SAS phone. I'm rambling. That is her job, by the way, to sit over here and judge me with just like noises, like or no, yep. For example, am I sassy? Best person in the world right here. So this is Q&A specifically about directing. I would also like to make it about adaptive writing for anime, because that is what I do largely. So 2 subjects I know a little bit about. So it is a Q&A, so I'll take questions and kind of answer them. And as those of you that were unfortunate enough to be at my Q&A yesterday, I do ramble for quite a bit. So just know that whenever you ask me a question, I'll probably spend 15 minutes answering it. Or 2, depending on how dumb a question it is. I'm kidding, you know, dumb questions, only stupid answers from me. So, who here is interested in the industry from that standpoint, the behind the mic thing? Okay, a few hands. Why are the rest of you here? do you have a question?
No, I'm just really excited.
Wow. I think you're over your legal limit of caffeine, my dear. It's okay. We love you. I could use some caffeine.
I never want to.
So yes, the thing is, I started voice acting in 06, 05, 06, somewhere in there, many moons ago. And after having done it for a little while, I was approached to direct. And it's a curious business, especially the dubbing industry, because it's a very niche industry. It's very kind of like one big dysfunctional family. So those of us that are fortunate enough to get behind the mic occasionally and do voices, tend to be like, oh, you know this, what, do you want to direct the show too? So it's kind of weird, and then you get asked to write stuff. It just kind of, the more you do, the more you get to do. So it's a very weird little industry, and I'm very lucky to have gotten into it, but I have stories. So who has a question for me? I saw a hand shoot up way there in the back of the black glove. Oh, you were very excited. Can you project?
I can.
Oh my. Well done. What's your question?
People in China can hear me when I talk.
Impressive.
My question is, I write manga, but I'm also interested in writing things like plays. I'm an art and theater student.
Nice.
Wow. So do you have any tips in general?
As a writer, particularly if you're writing drama, and that does sound to me like what you're interested in is writing plays and scripts and things like that, where the focus is on character and dialogue. Well, all writing is focused on character, really. But specifically when you only have dialogue to have those characters speak through, the best thing for you to do, that I know of, that I do all the time, is read constantly. And read outside of your comfort zone, because we tend to kind of find what we like and stick with it, and it's very difficult to get into other books that don't seem to speak to us just right off the shelf. But that's generally a mistake. Find recommendations and read a book that you otherwise would never have picked up for yourself, because it's very important to, as a writer particularly, it's very important to bring the part of you that likes to read to the table and read outside of your comfort zone and absorb and be able to acclimate to different styles of writing, the way this particular author or script writer or what have you, or poet, handles dialogue or handles character. Because as a script editor, which is something I also do, it's called lead writing. That's when we're working on a show and you contribute scripts, but then you're also responsible for looking over an entire contract of scripts written by your team and making sure that they all kind of sound like they were written by the same person, all in the same tone. And one of my favorite people to script edit is Patrick Seitz, and he and I have worked together on many, many things. He played Germany and Italia, for those of you that needed that information. Patrick is a wonderful actor and an absolutely sublime writer. Any chance I have to work with him, I jump at, because it's like we share a brain. And but when I sit down to read his scripts, this really marvelous thing happens. I can completely ignore the character column where the names are given for who's saying what, and I can just read the dialogue. And because he's so incredibly good at writing very distinct styles for each particular character, I know who's speaking without having to avail myself of the character column. And that, to me, is an example of a really good script. These characters jump right off the page before an actor has ever, gotten to them. And I know who's speaking just because of the way he uses words for each individual person. He puts a lot of thought into how people use language differently. And we worked on a lot of shows where there's huge ensemble casts, so there's a wonderful chance to have 8, 9 different people in a particular scene, and it's like writing an opera. You're like, suddenly there's all this weird sort of vocal counterpoint going on, where this person says this and this person says this, and you just know, wow, that has to be this kind of line because so-and-so would never speak like that, so this has to be that. And it's really fun. And that's a difficult skill to develop as a writer, because the biggest challenge for anyone sitting down to write is to try to, they're always telling you to find your voice, and that of course is very true. But your voice is more abstract. When you're writing the voices for other characters, your voice, your own personal voice, has to take a bit of a back seat. And the character, as they want to exist, has to come out. And you have to be very careful that your characters don't all sound like you, because it's less relatable, and then there's less drama or less dynamic because the characters are too similar. And that's where drama comes from. It's conflict. It's when you've got 2 or 3 or more characters together who have very, very disparate worldviews, and they have to kind of get together and hash it out. And it's wonderful to express that through the subtext of what they don't say. So it's really interesting. And so but you learn that by reading. For my money, the best example in the English language of people who can write characters, for example, are Shakespeare. Shakespeare, and I know that sounds like a very boring answer to those of you that have gone through high school English and think, oh, but the truth is, while there is a tiny bit of a language barrier for most people when dealing with someone like Shakespeare, because he was writing, several hundred years ago, and we don't speak like that anymore, when you really get down to the mechanics of what he's writing, as someone said it best, a literary critic who I'm very fond of, named Harold Bloom, written extensively about Shakespeare. He calls himself a bardolater, which is a very fancy way of saying he worships the bard. He says that, unlike a lot of other authors, Shakespeare is one of those impossible authors. You cannot locate him anywhere in his own works, because he's such a non-existent personality, and he's so good at wrapping his head around various characters that whoever you're reading at a given moment, you completely find yourself agreeing with them, even if they're complete jerks. If you watch Richard III and you think, oh my God, this horrible person is on stage and he's killing people and he's, doing horrible things and he's totally winking at the audience going, see, and you're like, wow, and I'm riveted. Because he's just such a fully formed personality that his moral failings, as it were, are completely transcended by his magnificence on the page. And that's really something that only the really top-notch writers are able to do, is kind of make you put your moral judgments aside, so to speak, and just completely buy the character for what they are. And you find yourself getting your head around them, almost despite your natural disinclination to want to know where the hell they're coming from because they strike you as so awful. But that's great. That's a wonderful thing, to actually make someone so unlike yourself, so human. And that you learn how to do as a writer by reading constantly. And as I said earlier, reading outside of your comfort zone. Read difficult things. And I don't mean difficult necessarily in the sense of, like don't go and read Proust or Jane Austen right off the bat. That's difficult language. It's hard to kind of get through. I highly recommend it. But when I say difficult reading, I mean reading that doesn't appeal to you at first. You're like, I just don't like these characters. I don't buy them. I don't get them. Force yourself to get them, because that's your job as a writer, is to bring everyone to life. Otherwise, you only have 1 or 2 characters that everyone relates to, and everyone else is just scenery. And it's everyone, even if they're the guy that's on page or on the screen for 2 minutes, should come across as absolutely real. So, does that help you, or was that just 10 minutes of me rambling?
That helps me phenomenally in both areas that I want to be writing.
Yay.
So,
Yay. Thank you. That was an excellent question, by the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you.